There is a room in my home that should not exist. It is patient, quiet, almost polite. Most days I pretend it is not there, but it keeps pretending back. The hallway in my apartment is not long. It runs from the front door to the bedroom like a thin, uninteresting spine, with the bathroom on one side, a small storage closet on the other, and scuffed white walls that always feel like they need repainting. I have walked it enough times, half asleep with a glass of water, that my feet know the number of steps without thinking. 7 from the bedroom to the bathroom, 5 from the bathroom to the front door, 12 if I walk it all at once. It is a small, reliable fact in a life that does not have many. The first time something felt wrong, it was so small that I almost missed it. It was a Tuesday night, late, but not late enough to be interesting. I had been sitting on the couch too long, numb eyes on a show I was not actually watching, the light from the screen turning the room into a rectangle of muted colors. Eventually, my spine complained loud enough that I got up and decided to brush my teeth and convince myself I was tired enough to sleep. Halfway down the hall, I stopped. Not for any intelligent reason, just stopped. It felt longer. That was all. I frowned, shifted my weight, and looked ahead. The end of the hall was where it always was. Bedroom door open, soft spill of lamplight on the carpet. The bathroom door to my left was exactly in place. The storage closet door to my right, same chipped paint. Nothing had moved, but my body refused to accept that. There is a certain kind of wrongness that starts in your gut instead of your eyes. My stomach tightened, my shoulders prickled, and for a second I had the irrational feeling that if I took one more step, I would not arrive where I expected to. I blinked. The feeling vanished. "This is stupid," I muttered, because talking to yourself out loud is a good way to snap reality back into place. 7 steps from bedroom to bathroom. I tested it. I turned around, went back into the bedroom, and started from the rug. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Bathroom door, right where it always was. I let out a breath I did not know I had been holding, brushed my teeth, washed my face, and turned off the bathroom light. When I stepped back into the hall, a small gust of cold air brushed the side of my neck. I froze again. The apartment has old windows. They like to leak drafts when it is windy, which it was not. Every window was closed. The heater ticked along quietly from the vent in the living room, the kind of background noise you forget until it stops. The cold air had not come from in front of me, where the front door was, or behind me, where the bedroom waited. It had risen, very gently, from my right, from the wall. I turned my head toward it. Blank white paint, slightly uneven roller strokes from whoever had last redone the place. A faint shadow from the cheap ceiling light. Nothing else. The cold air vanished as quickly as it appeared. I reached out and touched the wall. It felt like wall, room temperature, a bit of roughness where the paint was too thin. Solid. Old building, I said to it, like an accusation. My voice sounded too loud in the narrow hall. I went back to bed. I looked once at the hallway before turning the lamp off, and I had the very real, very quiet feeling that the space between the bathroom and the closet was watching me. I ignored it. Ignoring things has always been one of my talents. The next morning, the hallway was back to normal. Or maybe I was. I carried my mug of coffee from the kitchen toward the bedroom and counted under my breath, more out of habit than suspicion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Bathroom door. Same as always. The wall to my right stood where I had left it. No mysterious drafts, no optical illusions, just the slightly cramped spine of my apartment. I shook off the weirdness of the previous night and went about my routine. Work, messages, that endless infinite scroll that pretends to be connection. By afternoon, the memory of my own unease had faded enough that I filed it under random brain glitch and forgot about it. Until the second time. It was a few days later. I had come back from the grocery store, arms biting under the plastic handles, keys already between my fingers. The front door stuck like it always does, the lock catching for just a second before giving way with a reluctant click. I nudged the door shut with my hip, dropped the bags near the kitchen, took off my shoes. The hallway looked off. I stared down it, slower now. The light from the bedroom was off, so the far end of the hall was shadowed, but that wasn't it. Something to do with the angle. It looked like the walls had shifted closer together by an inch, like someone had taken the slider of my apartment in a design program and nudged the width down one notch. I walked down it, this time palms brushing each wall as I went. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I stopped. That wasn't right. I went back to the front door, heart beating a little faster now. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then an eighth small, reluctant step before I was fully at the bedroom threshold. I looked back. The hallway seemed to stare back. Floorboards, I told myself. You changed your stride. You're being weird. It is incredible how fast your brain will invent reasons not to be afraid. I leaned against the bedroom doorframe and tried to prove myself wrong. I measured with my eyes. I measured with my body. I measured with the memory of all the times I had walked this space without counting. The apartment did not care. When I stood still, it felt normal. When I walked, it did not. The longer I stared, the more certain I became that if I had someone here with me, they would swear the hallway had always been this length. That I was misremembering. The problem is that I have never been good at trusting my own memory, so I did the thing I always do when something unsettles me. I pushed the feeling down and stacked something ordinary on top of it. Groceries, work, laundry. The hallway could be wrong later. The first time I admitted to myself that the apartment was behaving like it had opinions, it was raining. Not dramatic, movie rain. The kind that just hangs there, persistent and bored, making the street look smeared. I had curled up on the couch under a blanket with a book I wasn't really taking in. The light from the lamp pooled in a warm circle around me, and beyond it the apartment faded into softer shadows. It was safe, or it should have been. Somewhere around midnight, the heater shut off and the apartment sighed into a different kind of quiet. The kind where you can hear the rain on the windows and the occasional car passing and your own breathing. Then the cold little breeze came back. It threaded along the side of my neck and under the collar of my worn sweater, like someone gently exhaling against my skin. I sat up straight, heart snapping wide awake, and turned my head. It was blowing from the hall. The front door was closed, deadbolt set. The windows in the living room were locked. The kitchen window over the sink was latched. I checked all of them, brushing my fingers over the seals as if I could feel where the world had gotten in. Nothing. The air from the hall was colder than the rest of the apartment. Not dramatically, just enough to make the hairs on my arms rise. I stepped into the doorway and stared down the length of the corridor. The bathroom door on the left, closed. The closet door on the right, slightly open. The wall between them, plain, white, unremarkable. The cold air drifted from somewhere in the middle, from no visible source at all. Old building, I said again, but softer, like I didn't want it to hear me. This time, saying it didn't make me feel any better. I stood there long enough that my toes started to ache on the bare floor. Eventually, I made myself walk down the hall, fingers skimming the walls. The air grew colder around the middle, then warmer, then colder again, like stepping through a patch of shade into sun then back. By the time I reached the bedroom, my chest felt tight. I grabbed my phone, opened the Notes app and typed, "Draft in hallway, middle, feels wrong." Then I felt stupid and closed it, but I did not delete it. The tapping started a week later. For the record, I do not scare easily at night the way some people do. I like the late hours. The world feels thinner and easier to manage when most people are asleep. Emails stop. Notifications quiet down. Everything is narrowed to breathing and whatever you have in front of you. That night, I had insomnia clinging to my back like a needy child. Every time I thought I was about to slip over the edge into sleep, some internal itch dragged me back up. At 2:17 a.m., I gave up. I got up, padded barefoot to the kitchen for water, and stood there in the half-dark, watching the blue digital clock on the microwave blink accusations at me. When I turned to go back to bed, I heard it. Tap. Then nothing. I froze. The sound had come from the hallway. Not loud, not urgent, just distinct. Like the sound of a knuckle against wood, muffled. I waited. Tap. Same cadence. Same spot. I told myself it was the pipes, or the neighbors, or the building shifting. The human brain can write an entire essay of rationalizations in less than a second when it does not want to believe what is happening. Tap. My throat felt dry. I stepped closer to the hall, barefoot on cold floorboards, moving like an animal that isn't sure which direction the predator is. The tapping came again, soft, measured. One tap. Pause. Another tap. Pause. Then 3 in a row, a small, careful rhythm. It was coming from the middle of the hall, not from the bathroom, not from the closet, from the wall itself. Stop it, I whispered, voice barely audible, though I did not know who I was talking to. Myself. The building. The part of my mind that was too awake. The sound paused. Silence stretched. Then, one last tap, like someone on the other side of the wall testing how thick it was. I swallowed hard, every muscle going tight, and did something that I still do not understand. I tapped back. Just once. Knuckle to plaster. The wall felt warmer than it should have. Nothing responded. The stillness returned, thick and unbroken. The fridge hummed. A car hissed through wet streets. Somewhere a distant dog barked and went quiet again. I stood there with my hand pressed to the wall and felt my heartbeat in my fingertips. Eventually I backed away, step by careful step, until I could retreat to my bedroom and close the door. I did not sleep that night, but the wall did not tap again. By the time the wall decided to show me its outline, I had almost convinced myself I was imagining things. Almost. The tapping had not returned. The cold drags had become less frequent. The hallway had settled back into its familiar number of steps. I walked it without counting again. I stopped writing notes into my phone about walls and wind and the feeling of being observed by spaces. Then one Saturday, I dropped my keys. I had come back from a walk, mind pleasantly fuzzy from fresh air and a podcast. As I stepped inside and pushed the door shut with my hip, my keyring slipped. I heard it skitter somewhere to my right. The rug by the door is small, and there are only so many places for something to go. I sighed and crouched to look, pushing the edge of the rug aside. The keys were not next to it. They had rolled farther than they should have, across the threshold of the hallway and toward the middle. I followed them on hands and knees, annoyed more than anything. Then I saw it. At first, I thought it was just a shadow. The light from the window in the living room slanted across the hall in a diagonal line, and in that line I could see a faint difference in the wall. A vertical seam. Not a crack. Not a flaw. A shape. I straightened slowly and let my eyes trace it. About as wide as a regular interior door, set into the wall between the bathroom and the closet. Too smooth to be drywall patched over. Too subtle to be a trick of paint. I took a step back. The seam blurred, vanished into normal wall. I took a step forward again, into the strip of light. The seam emerged. My pulse sped up, beating a little too hard against my ribs. I reached out a cautious hand and pressed my palm flat against it. The wall was not cold. It was warm. Not like a heater. Like skin. My breath hitched. I snatched my hand back before I could stop myself. For a moment, I had the sensation that if I pressed harder, if I leaned my full weight into it, something would give. The wall would not crumble. It would open. The thought made my stomach flip. There is no door here, I told myself. There has never been a door here. The floor plan the landlord gave you shows nothing. You have lived here for 11 months. You know this space. But the seam stayed, faint and stubborn, in the light. I turned away, went to my desk and pulled the manila folder from the drawer where I kept all my lease documents. It took me a few minutes to find the copy of the layout, folded and creased, but legible. Living room, kitchen, bath, bedroom, closet. No extra room. No extra door. I stared at the lines and then at the wall. It is uniquely disorienting to have blueprints tell you that what you are seeing does not exist. By the time evening fell and the light shifted away, the seam disappeared again. The wall became simple and blank. I could stare at it for minutes and see nothing strange. But I had seen it once. That was enough. There was a door drawn in the wrong place in my home. Not on paper. On reality. I went to bed that night with all the doors to all the rooms open, just to prove to myself that I had nothing to hide from. The hallway felt longer than it ever had. Outside, the building creaked as if it was trying very hard not to laugh. I avoided the seam for a while. Not intentionally. Just the kind of avoidance you don't admit to. The hallway became a place I walked faster through. Eyes straight ahead, pretending that the slight tightening in my chest was unrelated. But avoidance has its limits. One night, I woke without knowing why. No nightmare. No sound. Just that sudden snap to consciousness when something in the dark changes shape. I blinked into the room. The air felt thick. like humidity without the moisture, a weight pressing down lightly on my lungs. I pushed the blankets aside and stepped into the hallway barefoot. The apartment was silent. Refrigerator hum. Building settling. The occasional groan of old pipes deep behind the walls. I don't know what made me look to the right, but I did. And the seam wasn't a seam anymore. It was a door. A real one. Crimson, the color of drying paint or diluted blood under fluorescent lights. Strong, matte, wrong. Its surface had no handle, just a faint vertical shine down its center where light from the living room barely touched it. My throat closed around my breath. I didn't move at first, didn't dare. I was afraid that if I blinked it would vanish, and afraid that if it didn't vanish, it meant everything I had been trying to rationalize could no longer be dismissed as a tired brain playing tricks. Then I saw it. A sliver. A line of darkness at the bottom corner of the door, like it was open just a few millimeters. Just enough to breathe. I leaned slightly, just enough to see if the gap actually existed. Inside that tiny dark line, something shifted. Not big, not visible. Just movement. A suggestion of motion. The door whispered. A soft velvet rustle, like fabric brushing another piece of fabric. My legs nearly buckled. I stepped backward until my shoulder met the opposite wall, my breath fluttering high in my throat. Then, like someone flicked a switch, the door dissolved into blank white wall again. No sound, no light, no breath of warm air from within. Just the ordinary narrow passageway of my apartment, looking back at me like it had done nothing at all. I didn't sleep until dawn. The morning made me bold in the way morning always does. Sunlight filtering weak and pale through the blinds, the smell of coffee, birds somewhere outside, normal things with normal meanings. I told myself I had been dreaming, that insomnia had carved monsters out of shadows, that the seam had looked like a door because I wanted to make sense of something senseless. Except the apartment was wrong. Not dramatically, just in that tiny, almost imperceptible way that made me question whether I was the one glitching, or reality was. I noticed it first with the photo frames. I only have 3. One of my parents on their anniversary, one of my younger self at some beach I barely remembered, and one of me at 20, with a friend I no longer talk to. They live on a shelf in the living room, always in the same order, always angled slightly outward, except today, the middle one, the beach photo, was reversed, turned inward so the picture faced the wall. I hadn't touched it. I never touched it. I frowned, flipped it back, and told myself it was grief-related avoidance. Some subconscious urge, some emotional reflex. Then I noticed the second thing. The towel in the bathroom was damp. Not damp like someone had wiped their hands on it, damp like it had been used after a shower. But I hadn't showered yet. My skin prickled. I checked the sinks. Dry. I checked the tub. Dry. I checked the kitchen. Normal. But the towel hung heavy with moisture. I touched it, and it left a cold imprint against my palm. The kind of cold that feels like someone else's skin temperature. It was small, harmless, deniable. I tried to let it go, until I found my notebook. It was the one I kept beside the couch, where I wrote things, thoughts, dreams, sometimes nothing. I flipped through it, bored, aimless, until I reached a page written in my handwriting that I had no memory of writing. The ink was fresher, the strokes slightly sharper. It said, "Stop shifting the frames. It confuses me." I dropped the notebook. It thudded to the floor. I stared at the words until they blurred. Who was me? Who wrote this? And why did the handwriting look exactly like mine except tired? I picked it back up and ran my fingers along the edge of the page. The ink smudged slightly. Fresh. My breath trembled in my chest. It felt like the room was borrowing pieces of my memory, moving them, reshelving them, leaving notes for itself. The next incident wasn't a sound, not exactly. It was more like an idea that didn't belong to me. A quiet pressure, pushing against the back of my mind. It happened while I was washing dishes. The water running, the scrape of a plate, the clink of glass against porcelain. Background noise that usually lulled my brain into a soft, manageable hum. Then something threaded into my thoughts. Turn around. It wasn't a voice. There were no syllables, no direction, no whisper, just the meaning. Like someone had pressed a sentence into the inside of my skull without speaking it. My fingers tightened around the glass in my hand. The thought came again, heavier this time. Turn around. My heart slammed against my ribs. I did not want to. I didn't know why I didn't want to, but every instinct screamed at me not to look behind me. Not because something terrible was there, but because something familiar might be. My breath hitched. Hot water ran over my hands. The pressure built like a patient fingertip, pressing on the inside of my consciousness. Turn. 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 A single drop of cold air slid down my spine. That broke me. I spun around, breath sharp, body braced. No one. Nothing. Just the hallway. Just the wall. Just the place where the red room sometimes pretended to hide. The pressure vanished instantly. My body didn't relax with it. I dried my hands shakily, sat down on the couch, and stared at the hallway for a very long time, waiting for something, anything to move. It didn't. But the apartment wasn't quiet. It just wasn't speaking in ways I could hear. It happened on a night like all the rest. No storm, no insomnia, no strange dreams. Just a gentle evening with a cup of chamomile tea between my palms and a blanket wrapped around my legs. I sat on the couch, the TV playing some documentary I wasn't watching, the room dim except for the lamp beside me. I exhaled slowly. My breath misted slightly in the faint glow. I frowned. The apartment was not that cold. I set my mug down and leaned forward. That's when I heard it. A slow inhale from the hallway. Long, soft, measured. Then an even slower exhale, with warm breath brushing faintly across my cheek. My blood froze. I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. The sound came again. Inhale, exhale, rhythmic, patient, human almost. It wasn't deep enough for lungs, wasn't shallow enough for pipes, wasn't jagged enough for wind. It was tired, a tired, living sound. My eyes widened, my hands gripping the couch cushion until my knuckles ached. The breathing continued for several seconds, soft and steady. Then it stopped. Silence recovered the apartment like nothing had happened. But the hallway felt heavy, like someone invisible had just walked back into the walls and was leaning there, listening. I didn't sleep that night either. I didn't even try. The first time I heard the extra step, I thought it was the neighbor upstairs. Old buildings like this one like to play percussion with other people's lives. Footsteps translated through worn beams, neighbors' routines mapped quietly into your ceiling. But this wasn't overhead. It was underneath me. I was walking down the hallway with a load of laundry in my arms, socks and t-shirts threatening to spill. I was focused on not dropping anything, on remembering whether I'd put detergent in already, on the vague ache behind my eyes that comes from too much time staring at screens. My bare feet patted softly on the boards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Somewhere between step 6 and 7, another sound joined in, a soft, nearly inaudible tread. Not perfectly in sync, just behind. My body noticed it before my brain did. The hair on my arms rose. A small jolt went through my spine. I paused mid-step, the laundry pile tilting. Silence. Footsteps from the upstairs apartment continued, faint and unrelated. Somewhere outdoors, a car went by. I swallowed, shifted the laundry, and kept walking. Step. Half step. My breath stuck. I stopped again. Silence. I turned slowly, looking down the length of the hallway. It glowed in the late afternoon light, looking perfectly ordinary, scuffed baseboards, that one tiny chip in the paint, the faint shadow where I'd once leaned a frame. Nothing moved. I told myself it was the way the boards rebounded after my weight left them. A delayed creak. A structural echo. The next day, it happened again. This time I was empty-handed, walking slower, listening without wanting to admit I was. Step. Half step. Always slightly behind. Always slightly softer. Always exactly where mine had just been. As if someone were following my path half a second later. I tried an experiment. I walked from bedroom to living room, counting aloud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The second, softer step matched my count with a breath of delay. It didn't sound like a recording. It didn't sound like an auditory hallucination. It sounded like someone walking just behind me, barefoot, matching my gait. I spun around so fast I nearly tripped. The hallway was empty. The air felt recently disturbed, like a curtain had just stopped moving. I backed into the living room and sat down hard on the couch, heart thudding. Later, when I tried to go to bed, I stood in the bedroom doorway, staring at the hall for a long time, listening. The silence felt crowded. The first time I saw her, I didn't realize that's who she was. It was one of those nights where sleep refused to be negotiated with. I lay staring at the ceiling until the angles of the room stopped making sense, then gave up and padded out for water. The apartment was dark enough that the edges blurred. I didn't bother with the hallway light. The glow from the living room was enough to outline where everything should be. As I passed the middle of the hall, I felt that by now familiar change in temperature. A slight drop, a prickling awareness, like walking past an open doorway. Except there was no doorway, until there was. I'm still not sure if it appeared, or if the darkness simply shifted around it. 1 second, just wall. The next, a darker rectangle. The suggestion of a doorframe carved out of shadow. Inside that rectangle, the air was a deep, heavy red. Not bright, not neon. More like the color that lives behind your eyelids when you stare at the sun too long, thick and pulsing. The door itself was open a handspan. just enough to see inside, just enough to make the choice to look or not. I should have gone back to bed, closed my eyes, convinced myself I was seeing tricks in the dark. Instead, I stepped closer. The red deepened, resolving into a dimly lit room beyond the opening. Walls painted a dark velvety crimson, corners lost to shadow. The air inside those few feet of visible space felt denser, like breathing through fabric. In the far corner, opposite the door, someone was sitting on the floor. At first I thought it was a shadow, a trick of angles. Then my eyes adjusted. It was a woman, knees drawn up, arms wrapped loosely around them, head tipped back until it rested against the wall. Her hair fell over her face in a way that blocked the details, but her outline was familiar. So familiar, it hurt. Same slope of shoulders, same tilt of chin, same narrow wrists and restless fingers. The longer I stared, the colder I became. She lifted her head the slightest bit, as if coming up from underwater, and I saw the suggestion of features, not monstrous, not rotting, not uncanny valley wrong, just tired in a way that felt like my own bone marrow. My breath caught audibly. The woman in the corner went still. Slowly, so slowly I might have imagined it, she turned her head. Our eyes met. I didn't see color, didn't see shape, just recognition. The kind of recognition that feels like someone opening a door to a room you've been keeping closed for years and saying, "I know what you did here." The moment our gazes locked, the hallway sighed. The door evaporated. One blink, and there was only blank white wall again. I stood there shaking, glass of water forgotten in my hand. Heartbeat, loud enough to drown out the fridge hum. Later, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling again, I whispered into the dark, "Who are you?" The apartment did not answer, but I knew, even if I didn't want to say it aloud. I started avoiding reflective surfaces. It wasn't a conscious decision at first, just a gradual pulling back from the bathroom mirror, from my own face on a black laptop screen, from windows at night that turned into unasked-for portraits. I brushed my teeth with my gaze trained on the sink. I washed my face staring at the faucet. I walked past the big mirror on the closet door with my peripheral vision blurred. Of course, the thing you avoid has a way of waiting for you. That morning, I was running late. I dashed from shower to bedroom wrapped in a towel, grabbed clothes from the chair and caught a glimpse of motion in the closet mirror. I didn't turn my head. I didn't need to. My reflection, in theory, should have matched me. Raised arm, towel, messy hair. What I saw in the corner of my vision was a fraction of a beat off. My arm moved. A moment later, hers did. I froze mid-reach. Water dripped from the ends of my hair onto the floor. Very slowly, I turned toward the mirror. She looked back at me. Me. Completely me. Same features. Same damp hair. Same posture. Except she was not breathing, not visibly. The small rise and fall of my chest did not appear in hers. The flare of my nostrils as I pulled in a shaky breath did not echo on her face. Her eyes were wider, brighter, watching me like she was starving. I lifted my hand very slightly. My reflection did not move. The world narrowed to the width of the glass. I lifted my hand higher. My reflection stayed as she was, arm limp at her side, lips parted the smallest amount, pupils dilated. We stared at each other. My throat closed. Then slowly she raised her hand to match mine. A fraction too late, like someone trying to remember choreography they hadn't practiced recently. My fingertips hovered a hair's breadth from the surface. Her fingertips hovered on the other side. My stomach roiled. I ripped my hand away and squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them again, the mirror was normal. My reflection yawned, afraid and annoyed in equal measure, hair dripping onto my shirt, eyes already rimmed with tired. I was alone in the glass. I did not feel alone. By now, I had started keeping 2 notebooks, one for work, one for the apartment. The second one lived on the coffee table, beside the remote and the abused coaster. Inside it, my handwriting grew more cramped and erratic with each new entry. Hallway longer again. Heard my own footsteps twice. Door visible at 3 a.m. Gone by. 3:02. Saw her. Saw myself. Writing it down helped. Or at least it made the experiences feel less like dreams. I refused to acknowledge it as a haunting. That word felt childish and wrong. It wasn't ghosts that scared me. It was the sense that the building had begun to remember me. Gathering all the parts I'd left scattered around myself and pulling them into one place. One night, after a too long day and too many little mistakes, I fell asleep on the couch with the TV still flickering on mute. When I woke, the room was dark, except for the faint band of streetlight at the edge of the curtains. My neck ached. My mouth tasted stale. I rubbed my eyes and reached for my phone, blinking at the time. 3:11 a.m. Of course, the apartment felt awake in a way it didn't during the day. The kind of alive that is all attention and no movement. I sat up, blanket falling to my lap. That's when I heard it, the softest scratch. Paper against wood. From the hallway. The sound was small enough that if the TV had been on at normal volume, I would have missed it completely. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. My heart thudded once hard. I stood, every joint heavy, and stepped toward the dark mouth of the hall. There in the middle, where the seam sometimes appeared in daylight and the door sometimes appeared at night, something thin and pale lay on the floor. A folded piece of paper, like it had been pushed from under a door. I swallowed, throat suddenly dry. My body shouted at me not to go closer. I went anyway. Each step felt like it weighed more than it should have. The floor groaned a little under my heels. I crouched, knees popping, and picked up the paper. It was ordinary printer stock, cheap, slightly rough, folded in half, creased cleanly. On the outside, in small, neat letters, was my name. I recognized the handwriting. It was mine, careful, tight, as if written slowly by a hand that had forgotten how to relax. I hesitated. My own fingers looked foreign holding the note. For a moment I considered dropping it, leaving it there for morning, where the logic of sunlight could have a chance to explain it away. Then I opened it. The inside held a single sentence. "You keep leaving me." That was all. No signature, no date. Just those 4 words perfectly centered. The room seemed to lean closer around me. I read it again. "You keep leaving me." Memories flickered, not of supernatural things, but of smaller, more ordinary abandonments. The messages I hadn't answered. The therapy I'd stopped. The promises I'd made to myself and broken quietly. Setting my own boundaries aside. Stepping out of my own skin whenever it became too uncomfortable to stay. "You keep leaving me." Something in my chest cracked. I folded the paper along the original crease, hands trembling, and held it like something fragile, dangerous, precious. It hit me then, with clarity that hurt. The room wasn't trying to take something from me. It was trying to give something back. The parts of myself I'd left behind. The ones I couldn't stand to look at. The ones that had nowhere else to live except in a space between walls. The red room wasn't haunted. It was occupied by me. The night I decided to stop being afraid of my own house, I woke up already standing. I don't remember leaving the bed. One moment, I was lying down, staring at the blurred shape of the curtain. The next, I was in the doorway of my bedroom, bare feet cold on the floor. The apartment was dark and not dark, edges outlined in shades of gray and blue. The air smelled faintly metallic, like rain on old pipes. The hallway stretched out in front of me. At its center, where the seam lived, the wall was no longer white. The red room door was open. Not a crack this time. Fully. A rectangular wound of deep, breathable red in the middle of my home. Warmth rolled out of it in slow pulses, like exhaled breath. The air shimmered faintly at the threshold, as if light and heat were trying to escape but kept circling back. For a moment, I just stood there, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my gums. I could continue as I had been, ignore it, pretend. Or I could step through. The thought alone made my knees threaten to buckle. Something shifted just inside the room, where I couldn't see. Not a figure, not a hand. Just the sense of presence adjusting its weight. Waiting. I took a breath that didn't want to fit in my lungs. "Okay," I whispered, though my voice shook. "Okay, I get it. I'm coming." My fingers brushed the edge of the doorway. The wood, if that's what it was, felt warmer than my skin. I crossed the threshold. The moment I did, the sounds of the apartment muted, as if someone had shut a very thick door behind me. Inside, the red room was smaller than it looked. Or maybe it was bigger. It was hard to tell. The walls were a deep, velvety crimson that seemed to absorb the light and give it back as a dull, pulsing glow. There were no windows, no lamps, no visible source of illumination, and yet I could see. The floor was not quite wood, not quite carpet. It had the softness of fabric under my feet, the solidity of something built to last. In the far corner she sat, the woman from before. The not reflection, the echo. Now that I was fully inside, there was no denying it. She was me. Her features were mine, traced as if by tired fingers. The same nose, same mouth, same worry lines carved a bit deeper between the brows. Her hair was my hair, but heavier, like it hadn't been washed in a while. Her clothes were a neutral, undefined comfort, not matching anything I owned, but embodying the exact kind of thing I would reach for when I stopped caring how I looked. She watched me approach with a stillness that made my skin crawl. Not predatory, not hungry, just waiting. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I settled for crossing them loosely over my chest, which only made me feel smaller. "You're real," I said, because it was the least interesting and most honest sentence in the world. She tilted her head. "So are you," she answered. Her voice was mine, same cadence, same slight roughness on certain consonants, but there was a tonal undercurrent I couldn't quite name, a weight, a hoarseness, like someone who has spent too long talking into a room that doesn't respond. We looked at each other in the reddish half-light. I expected horror. I expected hostility. What I felt instead was embarrassment, like catching someone reading a diary you'd forgotten you'd written. "Where did you come from?" I asked. She blinked slowly. "From you," she said, as if it were obvious. "Where else?" A dozen questions jostled for position in my throat. I picked the most practical. "How long have you been here?" She considered. "I don't know. long enough to get used to the way the walls sound when you're scared. Something in my chest clenched. And this place? This room? What is it? Her gaze drifted around the crimson walls. Somewhere to put things you didn't want to feel, she said eventually. Somewhere to live when you weren't willing to live with all of yourself. Anger sparked before I could stop it. I didn't choose this, I snapped. She raised an eyebrow, that exact same annoyed arch I had seen in my own reflection 1,000 times. Didn't you? She asked quietly. Her tone wasn't accusing. That made it worse. We didn't scream. It would have been easier if we had. If there'd been shouting or threats, or some clear line where the evil thing made itself obvious and I was allowed to be purely righteously afraid. Instead, we had a conversation, a slow and painful one. You keep leaving, she said, when I didn't speak right away. Every time something hurts too much or feels too complicated, you step out of it. You dissociate. You change the subject. You distract yourself. You let pieces of you sit in rooms like this and you walk away. That's called coping, I said, defensively. Coping is coming back when you can, she answered. You never came back. I opened my mouth and closed it again. Memories I'd worked very hard not to replay rose up, not supernatural, not dramatic, just sharp. The messages half-typed and deleted, the appointments canceled and never rescheduled, the late-night intrusive thoughts shoved under the bed and left to rot. I had to survive, I muttered. She nodded. Of course, she said. You did. You're good at surviving. You got out of the rooms that hurt. You just forgot that I was still in them. My throat burned. I didn't know you were there. You did, she corrected gently. You just called it something else. Numbness, exhaustion. I'm just like this. You kept leaving, and the parts of you that couldn't follow had to live somewhere. So I built this. She spread a hand in a small gesture that took in the walls, the floor, the pulsing reddish air. I turned slowly, taking the room in with new eyes. Up close, the walls weren't smooth. They were layered, thousands of thin, translucent slices of something like wallpaper and something like skin, each one holding a faint print of an emotion. Fleeting panics, aborted joys, swallowed words. Each layer a moment I had chosen not to fully feel. I thought. My voice cracked. I swallowed. I thought I was moving on. Her gaze softened. You were moving, she said. Not the same thing. I laughed, a brittle, humorless sound that made the room dim for a second. So what are you, exactly? I asked. My ghost? She smiled, faintly. You're not dead, she said. Yet. Comforting, I muttered. I'm not a ghost, she went on. I'm accumulation. I'm what you leave behind every time you say it doesn't matter when it does. I'm every time you pretend you're fine to make someone else comfortable. I'm the version of you that stayed in the hard moments when you walked out. My eyes stung. Why the tapping? I whispered. The drafts. The footsteps. She tilted her head. I was trying to get your attention, she said simply. I only have so many ways. In the note, I held it up. I hadn't let go of it since entering the room. You keep leaving me. She looked at the paper, and something like embarrassment flickered across her face. I got impatient, she admitted. Subtlety wasn't working. A laugh escaped me, startled, wet. So what now? I asked. She exhaled, a long, tired breath, and for the first time I noticed that there was a thread of light connecting the center of her chest to mine. Thin, shimmering, stretching across the space between us. It pulsed with our heartbeats. "I can't keep living in your walls," she said. "It's cramped and it's cold, and I am very, very tired of watching you walk past me like I'm not here." Guilt slammed into me. "I didn't know how," I whispered, "to not do that." Her eyes were kind, and that almost undid me. "You don't have to know how," she said. "You just have to stop leaving." "How?" She extended a hand. "Start by letting me back in," she said. "All of me. The fear, the anger, the grief you think is too much, the softness you're afraid people will throw away. Everything you've been storing here so you wouldn't have to feel it all at once." My heart hammered. "If I do that," I said slowly, "won't it crush me?" "Maybe," she said, "for a while. Or maybe it will just feel like finally being honest. But I promise you this." She held my gaze, steady and unblinking. "It's lonelier here." My eyes blurred. The room pulsed gently around us, crimson deepening, shadows shifting like slow breath. The thread of light between us brightened. I looked at her hand. I knew, in a way I cannot articulate, that taking it would change something permanently. That there would be no going back to the comfortable half-absence I'd been calling a life. I also knew I was tired. So very, very tired. I stepped forward and put my palm against hers. Contact was warm. Not electric, not cinematic. Just warm, human. The kind of warmth I had always reserved for other people and rarely extended inward. The moment our hands met, the thread of light between our chests flared, flooding the red room with brightness. I gasped. Not from pain, from density. Emotions poured into me in a rush. Not in scenes or images, but in compressed feelings. The grief of being talked over. The anger of being dismissed. The numbness of staying silent when I wanted to shout. The small daily sorrows I had refused to name because they seemed too insignificant to warrant attention. The tenderness I had felt, and then smothered because it wasn't returned the way I wanted. It all rolled through me at once, a storm I had spent years postponing. My knees buckled. She held on, her grip steady. "It's okay," she said, and it was my voice, but older, stronger. "Feel it, all of it. It doesn't last forever. I should know. I've been feeling it for you this whole time." I cried. I cried hard, ugly, breathless, shoulder-shaking tears that I usually saved for the safety of a shower or not at all. The room did not punish me for it. The walls did not close in. The floor did not swallow me. The red room held us. Gradually, the rush slowed. The thread of light dimmed back to a gentle glow. When I could finally breathe without choking, I realized something had changed. She looked lighter, still tired but less worn at the edges. The red of the walls had softened to something warmer, more like the inside of a closed eye in sunlight. "How do you feel?" she asked. I checked. I was exhausted, raw, tender, but I didn't feel hollow. I felt full. "Like I finally told the truth," I whispered. She smiled. "Good," she said. The thread of light shimmered one last time. Then, gently, it drew her toward me, or me toward her, or both at once. It wasn't like absorption. It wasn't like consumption. It was like two halves of a sentence being placed together after years of existing as fragments. She stepped forward. I did too. Our chests merged, our outlines overlapping, and for a moment I was looking out from both sets of eyes at once. The one that had lived in the world, and the one that had lived in the walls. Then there was only one. Me, standing alone in the middle of the red room. The space around me flickered, the walls sighed in relief, and then they began to fade, not crumble, not die, just recede. The crimson soaked back into unseen layers. The floor cooled, the doorway behind me widened, revealing the ordinary low light of my hallway. I stepped out. When I turned back, there was only blank white wall. No seam, no door, no breath, just paint. For the first time since I'd moved in, the apartment felt exactly as big as it was supposed to be. Not bigger, not smaller, just right. I waited for it to come back. For days, weeks, I half expected to hear tapping in the walls again, to feel the cold push of air along my neck, to see my reflection lag half a second behind. Habits of fear don't unlearn themselves overnight. But the hallway remained stubbornly ordinary. 7 steps from bedroom to bathroom, 5 from bathroom to door, 12 all the way. I still counted, sometimes under my breath, just to make sure. The photo frames stayed facing the right way. The towel only got damp when I used it. My notebooks contained only words I remembered writing. At first, the normalcy felt eerie. I had grown used to the house watching me, to the sense of someone in the walls. Without it, the silence felt big. But the space that opened wasn't empty. It was mine. I noticed other small shifts inside. When someone crossed a boundary, I didn't immediately shrink and change the subject. My chest tightened. Yes, the old pattern. But right behind it came a warmth from the same place the red room had once lived. A quiet voice saying, "We don't leave ourselves anymore." I said no more often. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just early. Gently. I let myself admit when I was lonely, instead of burying it under brightness and distraction. I made that therapy appointment and didn't cancel it at the last minute. I replied to messages with actual answers instead of safe half-truths. Every time I did, I felt the faintest echo of that thread of light in my chest, pulsing approval. One morning, I stood in the middle of the hallway with my coffee, just existing. The white wall between bathroom and closet looked back at me, completely ordinary. "I know you," I told it. It didn't respond, of course. Walls don't talk. But I did. That was the difference. Later, when I passed the closet mirror, I forced myself to look. My reflection looked back. Hair messy, shirt wrinkled, eyes still carrying that familiar tiredness. I lifted my hand. She did too. Perfectly in sync. I smiled. So did she. For the first time, I didn't flinch. I didn't wonder if there was another version of me, hiding just beneath the surface of the glass. There might still be rooms inside me that I hadn't walked into yet. But I knew this much. If they appeared, I wouldn't leave anyone in them alone. Not anymore. As I turned away, a strange, small thought floated up, gentle and amused. If there is still a red room here, it's not between the walls. It's in my chest. And this time, the door is open from the inside. Thank you for visiting. We really hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Who knows what it will be?